the question that I asked my husband was based on Jack Kornfield getting divorced. And it was so interesting how it impacted me. I was like, wait a second, here's this very awake man who's working, really consciously with his wife. And then he gets divorced. And I'm like, oh my God, if he can get divorced, then that means
Who's
I
safe?
could get divorced. Yeah.
Who's safe? Yeah.
Yeah. So then that's why I asked my husband, I'm like, do you think it's possible that we could get divorced? And when he was like, yeah, I think about that every day. I like my jaw, my heart, like I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. So I think in some cases, that's where you say like, hey mom, if you're going to keep drinking, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And speaking about the drinking is speaking about the unspeakable. In a business relationship or in a marriage where you're really like bound to each other, that's where the stakes get really high. And it's important to recognize there might have to be some significant shifts that take place. And you don't want to ever give an ultimatum. I just do not like them at all.
Right.
But you have to be willing to sit with yourself and see, what am I willing to do? If this person isn't able to meet me, not even necessarily halfway, even like a quarter of the way, a third of the way. Because if somebody's willing to meet you a little bit of the way, then there's possibility to make some changes.
Welcome back to Diacardia, the podcast where we help pairs and partners to grow as individuals and to strengthen their relationship by speaking and listening through the heart. Got a great guest today. Andrea Dindinger is a certified family coach, marriage coach, relationship coach, works in the Bay Area of California, as I do, coincidentally. And I've been following Andrea on Instagram because her posts are outstanding. So it's Dindinger. You can see it at the bottom. Andrea, welcome to Diacardia.
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.
I am delighted to have you. First of all, you had an announcement, it said on the Instagram screen, and I loved it. And I wonder if you'll just share it with our listeners what your announcement was.
I was announcing that I had created a Substack and I was moving my newsletter over to the Substack. But the reason, what came out of that was kind of like almost like a aha moment of the reason I do this work, why I believe so passionately in this work of helping couples navigate the complexities of being in a relationship. Is the people I'm doing it for really the children, their children, even if they don't have children, they have nieces or nephews or neighborhood kids. But I feel like it's imperative for all adults to be able to do this emotional maturing work so that we're modeling that for the younger generation. So each generation becomes a little bit more awake, a little bit more mature in terms of their EQ.
Yeah, their emotional quotient, their EQ. Yeah, and there's also I love that you put it in the positive side, that we can model a way of being aware or awake, as you said, and to be a little more emotionally adept than maybe our parents were. There's also a big pain avoidance, though, too, isn't there, when we get this right? Not just that we model for good behavior for the kids, but...
But what happens is when we are modeling that, we actually feel better inside of ourselves. And when we are really practicing, people say it's so impossible to talk about some things. And there are some things that are really, really hard to talk about. I'm not dismissing that. But when we build the muscle and the capacity to tolerate our own discomfort and can speak about things that feel unspeakable, we feel better on our inside. Even if we cry, even if we like melt down and feel like we can't tolerate it, we do it. It's like we've lifted such a burden from our chests, and
Mm.
we feel physically, emotionally, mentally better. And the people around us just feel the ripples of that impact.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's incredible, and it's hard
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah. Um, we'll get into the hardness, but I want to stay here for a minute. Um, I love the idea that you're expressing that we feel better on the inside. And when we feel better, we're better with our kids, we're better with our aging parents, right? When we can be in that kind of
Hmm.
state. But I want to stop you for a minute because so many of the coaching clients I deal with,
Hmm.
whether one on one or often in relationship, and also friends of mine in marital type relationships,
Hmm.
it's really hard for one, right? So, uh, for one, typically more than the other. Me, I love this stuff. I swim in it. My wife, it's work. It's hard
Hmm.
to get here. So, I want to ask you, as a therapist who's seen many people, how do you help the partner who doesn't intuitively think, oh yeah, I feel better, like like the way
Right.
I'm moving my hands around, and like, yeah, I just feel better when I'm honest with her or him, when I open up emotionally. For some, they don't really, I mean, in the moment they don't feel better, right? So how does
Right.
that speak to them for a minute? Speak to that person who says, why do I want to go through the negative stuff and the hard stuff? Why do I want to share with you this stuff that's hard, that I don't even like about myself, and the introspection is hard? Do you have a few words for that partner?
Yeah. I mean, that's my husband, you know?
Yeah,
He
yeah,
he, he
yeah,
doesn't want to do that. He's
yeah.
like, "Oh." I'm like, "I know. I know." He's like, "God, it's like we would have a conversation about watching, a sad movie, and he's like, "I don't want to feel that way." I'm
Mm.
like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's such a release. It feels so cathartic to have a good cry." And he's like, "I don't want to feel that way." And he still doesn't, but the amount that he has experienced in terms of how much better he feels speaking to something that's uncomfortable is, over 19 years, he's really grown a lot.
Yeah,
But when you think about it, is, we all grow up in our families, and some of us grow up in families where we can't speak about things. And for whatever reason, I grew up as a kind of kid who just would say it like it is. I would say to my grandparents, I'm like 8, 7 years old. Why don't you sleep in the same bedroom together? Nobody else would ask that question. But so
right.
that's just part of like who I am, how I was born and brought into this world. But for the people who are out there and they're just like, no way, Andrea, am I going to have this conversation? Um, those people, I think, need a lot of love and a lot of support around going slow. It might even just be able to say, like, oh, it really bummed me out that you didn't wipe the crumbs off the kitchen counter. That might be a big thing for somebody to say. For you and me, why didn't you wipe the crumbs off? That bugs me. I just cleaned the kitchen. But for some people, that's a really hard thing to do because of the families that they grew up in. And so what I tell those people is like, go slowly. Take it like do small little things that feel like you're going out of your comfort zone. Don't do something huge because that's not going to ever be beneficial for anyone. But you have to honor the fear that comes up and honor the trepidation. At the same time, take little baby steps to move forward into the discomfort, and
Mm,
that with practice we become better and more capable. It comes to us more easily.
mm, mm.
It's
And do
really a
they?
muscle.
Yeah, one of the things I wonder about is, do they hear it at the door, so to speak, right before they come into the house and start doing those little things? When you
Hmm.
sit with them in a session with a couple, and let's use the stereotypical way. Now, let's flip the stereotypical way. Let's say the man is the one who comes in and says, I really want to talk more with my wife. She's uptight about talking about her feelings.
Hmm.
Maybe it bleeds into the sexual domain.
Yeah,
She's
always.
uncomfortable talking in bed. Uh, so for that client, when the woman is at the door of your office, so to speak, before she's agreed to try some little things, what do you say that makes you can't make somebody feel anything, but makes her feel like, okay, I want to try. I'll try some little things. What's the argument for that person who just says, like, we didn't talk about it at home, don't need to talk about it, don't want to talk, don't like
Mhm.
talking about it? Like, is there something that you help that spouse? In this case, I'm giving the example of a woman who doesn't want to speak.
It often is a woman. I think we
Is it?
have this
Yep.
idea that it's generally the man who doesn't want to, and oftentimes it is. But there's plenty of women who are like, "Ooh, we don't need to go there, Andrea." And
Hmm.
I think where I come in is, people come to see me for a reason, right? People are hurting. um there are some people who are really, like, especially a younger generation, who want to be really proactive and start working on the relationship while they still really adore and love each other,
Yeah.
before there's all this baggage that kind of gets built up over the decades. So there's a few of those couples, but for
Yeah.
the
But most
majority.
have a problem, right? They want to work something out.
Right.
Yeah.
For the majority, there's something that's causing some pain. And so I always want to meet them there. And if it's that, my husband always wants to talk to me and I am not interested, well, that's causing her pain. It's causing him pain too, but it's causing her pain. And so I always want to investigate, like, what's the worst part of it? Ah, well,
Hmm.
I just want to watch my show and they just start talking and they want to talk. Oh, so what could you say in that moment to create a little bit of some space for you that says, like, oh, I want to hear what you have to say, but I don't have really any capacity to hear it right now. So even just like that little bit of setting a boundary helps that person feel like, oh, I might be able to have some of these harder conversations, but you have to build up that safety within the marriage for
Yeah.
that to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like step by step. I don't even know exactly how it happens, but something begins to happen where people feel that sense of, you and I are listening really intently, really carefully to the smallest things. And when you feel heard, even if you don't want to be talking, it begins to start feeling good and you feel understood. Empathy feels good no matter who it comes from.
Mm.
That sense of compassion for what somebody's going through, to have compassion for somebody who doesn't want to talk. It
Right.
actually feels good and you feel understood. And that
Yeah.
begins to shift, um, some of the ice that's kind of surrounding you and keeping you from connecting.
Yeah. 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 That's beautiful. So, I mean, what you're saying for the one who tends to enjoy the conversation is your job is really to make it safe for small steps. Your job is to listen as fully as
Mhm.
you can.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, Andrew, when you talk about boundaries, they come up so often in conversations, right? They're a
Hmm.
popular term of the last 15 or so years to set boundaries. When I was hearing you, I had a thought in my head for the first time, which is almost like before the boundaries setting, is the walking up onto the balcony together. It's like, hey,
Hmm.
babe, like, let's take a step back or a step out. My mentor at the Kennedy School at Harvard used to talk about the balcony, was always get on the balcony, get off the dance floor. And it's almost like, hey, we're going to have a conversation about the conversation. And you wouldn't
Yes.
say that because
You
that would be
could.
like, you could, but
You
it sounds like
could.
so process crazy, like, oh my God, we're going to have a conversation about the conversation. But so
But, like,
maybe
I'll
please say that. Yeah.
sometimes support a
Yeah.
couple, like, if what they need to talk about is something that's very shame related, which
Yeah.
is the last thing anybody wants to talk about.
Right. Right.
What I will help guide them into conversation is like, hey, I know this, I know it's really hard to talk about this thing because so much shame comes up. And I'm wondering if there's anything that, um, we're not going to talk about the thing. We're going to just talk about, like, what you need in order to feel safe
Mm.
to potentially talk about something that's shameful. something that's painful or hard. And I think that is kind of that getting up on the balcony and saying, like, I know we can't talk about this, but what would make it helpful to talk about not this specific thing, but something that's similar to this? Or what do you think would be helpful for, our friends next door who have trouble talking about? What do you imagine that, she might need or he might need in order to talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
Because once you can start thinking about, oh, it's not me who has to have this conversation, it's Dan. And if I could think about what Dan might need,
Mm-hmm.
then I might go, oh, well, maybe Andrea might need that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe if we did it this way,
Yeah.
um, and I love that idea of getting up on the balcony, because then you become the observer. You're like
Yes.
not in the dance of it all. You're actually
Yeah.
watching the dance from above, and then you have a lot more choices.
Yeah. 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 It's funny when you were talking, I was up on that balcony and thinking, yeah, it's like you move the chairs around a little bit, like,
Hmm.
because the
Hmm.
environment really matters when somebody needs to feel safe. We're animals at bottom
Yeah.
and we live in environments and they need to feel safe for us. It made me actually think of, like, maybe it's better that we just drive in the car, right? And talk
Oh,
shoulder to shoulder, rather like move again, from the press box to the balcony.
hmm.
Maybe we're running the wrong play. Is there a different
Yeah.
way?
Or like
That's right.
walking
Or
at
walking.
night when it's dark, and you
Mm,
don't have to look each other. You don't, but you're moving your bodies, which helps process so much. And then you're not having to look at each other. You're side by side, so you can still feel each other. But you're just kind of navigating through the neighborhood, and it's oftentimes easier to talk about even like the kind of the mundane things in that
mhm,
environment.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, thank you. That's just really wonderful. Takes me back. I was walking with a friend not too long ago, and our hands would brush against each other. It was a woman, roughly my age,
Hmm.
not a romantic relationship.
Hmm.
But there was something kind of sweet about that.
Hmm.
Looking straight ahead, talking about, in this case, grief issues. She'd lost both parents and gotten cancer in a couple of years' time. Um, just to be there in that way. Well, let's.
Hmm.
I want to bridge to something else you've written a lot about or spoken a lot about, which I think is super interesting and has me thinking. And I don't know if I would call it delusion or deception, but the idea is this: you've shared it in a couple situations. She finds out, he sends her a text message that he actually meant for somebody
Mm,
else outside the marriage, and it's
mm,
boundary busting and anxiety producing. And you use it, as do people commenting below, to describe how sometimes we have self-deception and we have deception about the other. We want to see their good side. We want things to be smooth. And so we screen out, like we're
mm,
wearing something on our eyes. We screen out their duplicitous behavior or their negative behavior, their harsh behavior. A friend of mine was talking about how their sibling would say, while their sibling's wife was talking, stupid. And it was
mm,
supposedly a joke because their little kids used to say stupid. But this person I was talking to said, it makes me
mm,
cringe when they say that about their wife under their brother because it's not funny. So,
mhm,
like, that person, that wife in that situation can feel like, okay, I should raise this, but they screen it out before it even
right.
happens because they don't want stress or don't want conflict or something like that. And then in the process, they're splitting themselves in two. The wife is saying, um, um, he is driving me crazy. He's mean. He's debasing me. He's treating me with incredible disrespect and like a child and like the thing you would tell your children not to say to other children. Like,
Mhm,
how could it be worse? But we separate that. It's too much to deal with that because of something else we want,
mhm,
right? So it almost feels like a a double deception. I
Right.
lie about what my partner's doing, and I lie about how I feel like it. Those are very strong words, lying.
I hear that oftentimes from people saying, like, I don't want to talk to friends about what, my marriage because, I don't want them I don't want them to pass judgment. But it's really like, I don't want to be held accountable for what's happening in my marriage.
I don't want
I
to be
don't,
held accountable.
I
That's why
don't
I'm
want
not
to be. Yeah.
telling my friends.
Yeah. And I think there's also the shame and there's also the embarrassment that's
Right.
there. But I think, when we think about ignoring something so blatant as receiving a text message from our spouse that is clearly not meant for us, that clearly implies a extramarital affair, and we're just like, I'm gonna, I'm gonna ignore that, or like, that wasn't for me, right? Like, oh, I'll believe them that no, they're not having an affair, that was just this other thing. I think about a couple of things. One is the level of safety that spouse has, whether it's financial, physical, emotional, what kind of resources they have. Do they have children? Do they have small children? Do they need this spouse that for their survival?
Hmm.
Are they working? Do they, what's their finances? And I think that's a big piece because you know, even like in the cases of like abuse, people say like, why would somebody stay in that relationship? I'm like, A, you cannot judge another person for what they've done, why they're doing or why they're doing it. But you have to look at the whole picture that somebody is navigating. And they're always making a choice. Is it that I will be homeless and or will I be, will it be really unsafe if I try to leave?
Right.
Or is it that you know, I'll just ignore it. Like I've had one couple that said, "Oh, I don't care if he has, sex with a prostitute. I'm not going to ever have sex with him again. I want to stay together for our kids." And I'm like, they ended up getting divorced.
Mhm.
But there's this idea that you can be okay with that. And I think you're right. There is a part of you that has to shut off some piece of yourself in the process. Simultaneously, I think you're doing some math equation inside around how bad is this really? What are the benefits that I'm getting from this relationship?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying our factory installed equipment, we need to be safe at various levels, and to raise an issue with him or her
Hmm.
may make us unsafe at that bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, that we don't have money, we don't have a house, he would kick or she would kick me out of the house,
Hmm.
or conflict that would raise old issues of me being yelled at and I can't take that.
Hmm.
So safety becomes an issue. Um, yeah, that's wonderful. And so not judging others or ourselves, right? Why am I holding back? Why don't I
Hmm.
share this? I should share more. I should be more open. Um, that's wonderful. How do you help people to speak the unspeakable? Let's say it's not a existential for the marriage
Hmm.
issue,
Hmm.
like he's having an affair, texting somebody else, and now denying that this
Right.
has happened. Okay, so that's the really high level. But at some lower levels, as life changes, so we're not in our 30s sexually the way we were in our 40s. We might have two kids. We might be tired. All kinds of things have
Hmm.
changed in the outer landscape of our aging and the inner landscape
And
of who we are, what our needs are. And so we want to say, hey, I don't feel close.
yeah.
But like the inner part, for somebody like me, the big inner part would be a religious part, would be a moral part, would be a good husband part. Like all of my identity would
Hmm.
scream, don't say you're not happy, at
Right.
whatever level I would say that. So, how do you help clients? How do we help ourselves when we aren't self deluding, but we are saying, I just haven't been as happy, or we're not spending
Hmm.
time the same way, or she's off with our oldest son all the time.
Mhm.
Like she prefers him to me. Like that happens a lot in
A
relationship,
lot,
right?
a
A
lot,
lot.
a lot.
That there's a comfort with a child that there isn't with the spouse. How do we start to edge ourselves when we start to become aware? Yeah, like if somebody were listening to this and they go, yeah, I
Oh,
actually
that's
do
me.
like my
Hmm.
oldest son a lot better than my husband. He's easier to be with he's curious about me. He's fresh to
Hmm.
new ideas, right? And all the comparisons, bing, 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 all the bells
Hmm.
start going off. If I hear that and I say, oh gosh, maybe I need to talk about that with my husband, or maybe the husband
Wife,
thinks,
right?
I'd
Hmm.
like to say to my wife, you love hanging out with Tommy. Like, am
What
I
about
still
me?
here? Yeah,
Hmm.
right. Like it was when they were babies. Like it's a
Right.
repeat of that.
Hmm.
That mother has a
I see that
baby. Like,
happen all the time.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
And I
talk to us
think,
about it. Talk to us about it.
it's interesting. I have a sophomore and a freshman in high school, and I can really see the end drawing near.
Right.
Um, and they're cool. They're interesting. I mean, they're hard, but there's something really cool and interesting about this age.
Hmm.
And I see a lot of couples who, the particularly the wife or the mom really over indexes on their involvement with their kids, with their soccer travel or their theater performances, or whatever's going on there. And because it's so common, I think it's important to talk about that. If you have a kid, say you've been with that kid for the last 16 years, but maybe you've been with your, husband for the last 20 years. Just that 4-year gap, or even if it's a 2-year gap, it's just more time. And children have so many less defenses up than adults. So defensively, it's easier to connect with somebody who has fewer defenses. But
Hmm.
over time, people's defenses get really strong. So that's why it makes it hard to connect. Oh, I bring something up and you get really irritated. And so I can't bring it up. What I suggest, and I've done it myself, is just I've sent my husband, I tell people to send emails or text messages. And it's something like, hey, I'm feeling really disconnected, more disconnected than I've maybe ever felt in our entire relationship. I really feel like we need some support, or I just really need you, your presence, your awareness. And if it's somebody who is really, who, you guys deeply love each other, I think most people are going to say, hey, I'm feeling that way too. They're going to take a risk, hopefully, and say, yeah, me too. I'm feeling really disconnected. And then once you've been able to name the elephant that's sitting there between the two of you, that's when you can say, like, hey, do you want to go for a walk after dinner? Do you want to like do some of these things that are not like not go out to dinner? Because I think that's a terrible way for couples to spend intimate time together at a restaurant where they're interrupted every couple of minutes. Like you're not going to have a real deep conversation, but you will if you're going on a walk. You will if you're sitting on the beach. You will if you're just out together, but you're not going to be in it. You might even do it better at a coffee shop than you would at a restaurant, having some time together, but or going for a drive, like you said, that side by side. But I find that when people have a hard time bringing something up with their spouse, an email or a text message is such a great way to say, hey, there's something I need to talk to you about.
Wow.
Hey, I need
I'm
to talk to you about your drinking, right?
real. Whoa, whoa, Andrea. Like, whoa. I'm so glad you came back to this. That you started on like an email or a text. Like to me, I'm like, wow, really? That feels like. I mean, I'll add a little piece that you posted this super interesting Instagram where I want to get it right, where you were having a conversation with your husband about wanting to quit the marriage. Do you ever want to quit the marriage?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
super interesting. Oh my God, like that's a daring thing to introduce. What if he or she says yes? But um then of course you and I would say, well, great, then you can process the feelings and what are you missing and what do you need? And, am I not paying attention to you? And,
Hmm.
let's talk it through. But wow, I just have to stop you and say, really? You would send an email or a post-it saying, I'm not feeling close to you and I'd like to
Yeah.
talk, right? You would say, and I'd like
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to send something like that, I'm not going to just be like, I don't feel close to you and, talk to the hand. I'm going to say,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah,
close to you. I miss you.
yeah,
I want to talk. I want to spend some time together. I've
yeah.
never felt like this before.
Mm,
Right. That implies like, I love you and I'm missing you. The
mm,
question that I asked my husband was based on Jack Kornfield getting divorced, and it was so interesting how it impacted me. I was like, wait a
mm.
second, here's this very awake man who's working, really consciously with his wife. And then he gets divorced, and I'm like, oh my God, if he can get divorced, then that means
Yeah. Who's
I could
safe?
get divorced.
Who's
Yeah.
safe? Yeah.
Yeah. So then that's why I asked my husband, I'm like, do you think it's possible that we could get divorced? And when he was like, yeah, I think about that every day. I like my jaw, my heart, like I couldn't believe it. I was stunned.
Wait, but Andrea, when you had that conversation that you shared with us just now, and
Hmm.
he said, I think about it every day, my thought was, oh, he's going to say that you don't measure up, right? That he wants something more. He wants to spread his wings. He's something else. But he said he was afraid he wasn't measuring up to
Gonna-
your expectations. So, like, if you know your husband worries that he doesn't meet up to your expectations, you could send him an email or a text and say, "Hey, I feel distant from you." Wouldn't all of his alarm bells go off and like, "Oh my God, this is it. She's dropping the other shoe. The bomb is going to
Yeah,
fall."
yeah, yeah, for sure.
That's
It
so
would make that
daring.
alarm. I mean, I that's the other thing I tell all of my couples is in every partnership, whether it's a friendship, a co-working situation, a boss to an employee, husband, wife, like somebody in the relationship has to take the leadership position. Somebody has to say, I'm willing to be a little bit more uncomfortable than my friend, my partner, my husband, my
Yeah.
coworker. Um, and once you identify that you have a little bit more comfort with discomfort than somebody else, that's when you can actually have those kind of conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's important that we are brave. I think we need more and more brave people um, out in the world who are willing to just to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's really really wonderful. And I want to add, which I think you would agree, and the way you formulated it, you've said this explicitly or implicitly. You're not leading with a you statement. You're not sending a text or an email saying, you're just not showing up for me, or you're distant all the time, or you seem to want to hang out with other people more than come home. Your expression was what? What did you say?
I'm missing you. I've never felt so disconnected. I've right. It's like you stay on your side of the fence, and if you can, I think it's so much easier to hear somebody's experience if they're staying on their side of the fence. I especially see this with girlfriends. They're like, "Oh my God, she just made me so angry." And I'm like,
Right.
"Well, can you speak to that, but can you stay on your side?" Like, "Oh, I was really bummed that you didn't show up on time." And it seems like I tell myself a story that you don't value our time together. When you do it that way, the other person is like, "Oh my goodness, I had no idea." Or oh shit, I need to examine my behavior. Like I need to do it better.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. When you're talking, it makes me think. I think of the boundary as a fence. Excuse me. I think of the boundary as a fence, and what typically happens. I think the way I hear it, when one of my adult kids or somebody else, my business partner, says I have to set a boundary, I immediately think they are closing themselves off to me. What have
mhm.
I done on my side of the fence? And what I hear you saying is you're on the other side of the fence, and you're saying, I'm feeling lonely, I'm missing you, I was
Hmm.
disappointed when you canceled last week because I care about the relationship, right? Hooking it back to why it's not an attack, but it's actually
Hmm.
a valuing. um yeah, that's
But you
really.
know that
Mm,
idea, like somebody says to you, like I'm setting a boundary, right? That
right,
can make you feel completely cut off, completely out left. And we're seeing that a lot with adult children cutting off their relationships with their parents. Like it's amazing how regular it's becoming.
right,
I know Oprah even did a segment on it. I didn't see it, but I know of it. But I think what's interesting about that, I'm setting this boundary. It would be so different if your son comes to you and says, "Hey, Dad, I am setting this boundary, and I need some space from you." If you took that as like something to be really curious about, not necessarily about you, but about your son, and said like, "Oh, buddy, thank you for telling me.
mhm,
I really appreciate that. You must be going through something. Do you care to share it? Or absolutely take as much space as you want. I am here for you no matter what." That would change somebody's need to shut down and cut this and create this cutoff,
right,
because you're not like grasping and like, what are you doing to me? You're not taking it. You're like, okay, like you're taking care of yourself, and I love you, and I want you to take care of yourself.
yeah, yeah, Andrea, that is really beautiful. As somebody who has experienced some of that uh, with one, and in some ways with all three of my children, have in different ways and with different levels of gravity set boundaries with me. And
Hmm.
what occurs to me so strongly now that I'm pretty far out of that, my kids are in their late 20s and 30s, is that it is their job description to separate from me and my
Yeah.
wife. It is their job description. It is my job description to help heft them, lift them, support them, let them go into their own experience of the world,
Yeah.
their own processing, their own relationships, their own faith or lack of faith, their own dealing with anxiety. And I don't know, something in the way you said that just triggered that kind of
Mhm.
generosity for me, that when, if I could replay the tape, when my kids set those boundaries, and sometimes I did this, I would say, good for you, like, good for you, go, you know,
Mhm.
do what you need to do. And like you say, I'll be here. In the Christian
Mhm.
tradition, there's the wonderful scripture of the prodigal son who goes off and spends half
Yeah.
of his dad's estate and stumbles his way back, and the father slays the calf and puts the robe around him and says, "You're welcome home." And that tests our faith. It really
Yeah.
does, in a very literal sense. Like when that kid says, I don't want to talk to you about it, about my
Yeah.
relationship. And you don't want them to get hurt in those relationships.
No, I mean, I think
But
what's so interesting is how powerful our love for our children is, and how, from the time it was our job to keep them alive.
yeah,
But our job increasingly becomes to let them go. My son turned 16 and he got his driver's license. And before that, I would pick him up from cross country and we'd have like 30 minutes in the car.
yeah.
And it was like the
Oh,
best 30 minutes. I mean,
oh,
the best 30 minutes. I loved that time. And we would talk about everything. Sometimes we wouldn't talk, but we would talk about everything. And so when he was getting his driver's license, I said to him like, "Oh, I know I'm going to be really sad when you start driving. And I really want you to start driving because I know you developmentally need to go out into the world and become your own man and become your
yeah,
own person. And I'll always be here. I'll always miss you, but I want you to drive. I want you to go out and be in the world. You don't need to stay here to take care of me."
mm,
And I think that if more parents were actually able to give their kids permission to go out and be in the world, I think kids would feel safer to do it. And then I don't know. I talk to me in 10 years and we can see if this is accurate, but I think we're going to create more confident kids who are feel more confident to take risks, right? So many kids are delaying getting their license or delaying relationships and or going through college and then not knowing what to do or how to do it and coming back home.
Back home. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that like it's a lot of it is on our parenting. That's like, don't go out in the street, don't get kidnapped, don't get in a car
Mhm.
accident, don't, right? And
Right.
actually you learn a lot if you get into a fender bender,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you learn a lot if you date somebody and your heart gets broken. You don't want it for them, but it's how we grow and how we mature, and it's part of being a human.
Hey, listen, Andrea, you should go back to this. I don't like to say you should, but I keep doing it with people. We should go back to this tape because I think what you said to your son, like that's magic.
Mhm.
Those words are magic. Like the power of a mother saying to her son, "I'm going to miss driving with you, but it's time for you to go out in the world and have independence and do your own thing in ways that you find responsible, and fun." Like
Mhm.
for a dad to say that to a daughter, there's still so many dads out there who think it's haha funny funny, I got a gun in the shop, and I'm going to meet you at the car when you pick up my daughter for the prom, and I'm going to tell you that I'm going to mess you up if one hair is out of place. Like, okay, enough of that. Like, the dad who says, sweetheart, like, go, like,
I trust
I
you.
trust you, right? Yeah, and the world's not a scary place because you are not a scared person, and you can make judgments, and you can erect
Mhm.
boundaries, and you can do what you need to do. I mean, that language, I think, I agree with you 100%. And the issues of estrangement from parents are so strong, and some of it is, I think kids have been held so tightly with visible or invisible strings
Mhm.
that they just have to bust out. And it's not about you. I mean, it is about your
Yeah.
behaviors, but eh, that's
Yeah.
a tough topic. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is really it's really great advice. I want to just return to one thing before we wrap up, and that is like how do you, what's
Mhm.
helped your clients speak the unspeakable? That if it is the marital situation we were talking about, or it could be the business situation. I've got a pair right now I'm working with where one is not speaking the unspeakable
Mhm.
because there is that Maslowian fear at different levels to talk to their senior partner in the relationship because there's concern about that. Um, what helps to have the courage and the words to say, send the email or the text, like, I need to talk, we need to set aside some time because I'm not feeling like we're aligned. You could say that in
Right.
business or at home. I don't feel like we're aligned right now, and it's hurting me.
Mhm.
What else can we say to help somebody who during this conversation has thought, yeah, I really would like to talk to my wife, my husband, my business partner, my mother about something that I've been holding for 35 years and how her expectations have changed and how I don't feel good with the way things
Mhm.
are going. What can you help us with, Andrea? One or two things come to mind for you?
The one thing is I just want to acknowledge that sometimes you send a text message or that email and that person does not want to talk to you about that. And so they do a whole song and dance around it and make you feel crazy that you're even bringing it up.
Uh-huh.
Like that's not an issue. I don't, like, no, I don't feel disconnected, right? Or like that didn't happen if they're talking about a parent, right? Like I just I feel really protective of people who do take the risk
Step. Yep. Yep. Yep.
and they
Good.
and they step into it and the business partner's like, "Oh no, we're fine financially," when they're not, or
Right.
the husband says, "I don't know what you're talking about. I feel fine," right? And they just do this like little dance thing. I want to acknowledge that that happens a lot. And so you're even though you feel like you're the person who's needing to gain this courage to step up and say something and make contact. I want to be mindful that there's somebody on the other end. You're doing that in partnership, whether it's husband, wife, partner, business partner, parent. There's somebody else on the other end, and you're needing to think about that. So we can be as brave as we want to, but if we have somebody on the other end who isn't able to hear anything we say based
Yeah.
on their
Yeah.
own, um, I think that is often the case why people get scared to bring something up. They don't want to talk about somebody's drinking. Like, your business partner shows up a little bit drunk and you're like, dude, this isn't going to work.
Right.
But the person
Right.
doesn't want anything to,
Right.
doesn't want to hear anything about it. So I think in some cases, that's where you say, like, hey mom, if you're going to keep drinking, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And speaking about the drinking is speaking about the unspeakable.
Mm-hmm.
In a business relationship or in a marriage where you're really like bound to each other, that's where the stakes get really high. And it's important to recognize there might have to be some significant shifts that take place. And that's, you don't want to ever give an ultimatum. I just do not like them at all. But
Right.
you have to be willing to sit with yourself and see, what am I willing to do? If this person isn't able to meet me, even not even necessarily halfway, even like a quarter of the way, a third of the way. Because if somebody's willing to meet you a little bit of the way, then there's possibility to make some changes, to make some movement
Mm-hmm.
forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
important to evaluate that,
Right. Right.
and and then to evaluate, have I been trying to say something but I haven't been saying it clearly? And if I haven't been saying it clearly, can I say it a little bit more directly? um, but sometimes it helps to like write it out a couple of times. Sometimes it helps to share it with a trusted friend, an advisor, a mentor, a therapist, really practicing what you would say, and then being really clear with what your ask is. So, like with a husband and wife, like, hey, I've never felt so disconnected from you, and it's scaring me. I'd like to sit down with a couples therapist. Right? That's like a request. Or if it's with your business partner, hey, we need to sit down and we need to talk about your drinking. I see that actually happen in a lot of business partners. And I need to talk about your drinking and how present you are in our business. It's not working for me. I'd
Right.
like to talk to you tomorrow at 2. And if that person isn't able to meet tomorrow at 2, then the other side has to recognize, like, okay, I probably should sit down with a lawyer or a mediator and figure out how I maybe separate myself from this business relationship, how I maybe separate myself from this marriage. I do think you need to sometimes have what is possible, or what the like other steps are to make it
Yeah.
so you feel confident.
Yeah. Yeah. In negotiation, they would sometimes refer to that as a BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. If they won't
Hmm.
come to the table, what is my best alternative? Is it leaving the
Hmm.
partnership? Is it going to a therapist? Is it sleeping in another room? Like, that's really important. I want to repeat a couple things you said to see if I got them right. And because I think they're so valuable, is that when you're thinking about sending this message, I'm not feeling connected. I'm not feeling like we're aligned. We need to talk. That you can anticipate and should anticipate as part of your planning that you could
Hmm.
lose big. They could gaslight you and say, everything is totally fine and I'm tired of this. And then you have to think about that bad now. Okay, what do I do then? Like, if they
Hmm.
don't think it's a problem, you could get a quarter, like you're saying. They might at least say, well, okay, we could start to talk about it. Um, they they could avoid it and not say anything, flight rather than fight, and
Hmm.
gaslighting you. They could just avoid it.
Hmm.
And all of those things, I think it's important. If I were thinking about reaching out to Jennifer or to one of my kids or to my dad when we had difficult days, it would be like waiting is not a bad thing. Like going slowly is not a bad thing. They may
Yeah.
respond now by gaslighting me. They may say, I'll talk about this, but I'm not going to talk about any of those other things. Or they could just avoid me. And sometimes time helps, right?
Yeah.
And we can graduate results. So I think that thinking ahead is just so enormously important. I wouldn't have thought of that really unless you had
Yeah,
said
because
it.
there's two of you in the relationship.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you're going to have to dance, and it may be a funny dance. It may be a slow start,
Yeah.
and he may not want to get up out of the chair at all, and you dance around him sitting in a chair for a while. But yeah, it's so amazing to be able to do this work, like
Yes.
with other people who may be clients, but with oneself, that we each have to grow our way through it. Like that example of your 16-year-old, to anticipate a great life in front of him, and to know the most loving thing you can do is to continue loosen reins that demonstrates that you trust him in the world, and with your partner to be able to do that in the ways that we tend to control. We all have our ways of controlling. So you've shed a lot of light. I have this image of lights going on around the room, and I really thank you, Andrea, for that, helping me think through things in my own life, and hopefully having people hear you in a way that they can take some little steps, decisive little steps. Yeah. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. I
Yeah.
love just the meeting of the minds and the excitement, and it's awesome.
It's the meeting of the minds, and it's the meeting of the hearts.
Yeah.
Back to your point at the beginning, when we do our own work, then our kids don't have to do it, and our grandkids don't have to do it. And the work that our parents didn't do, God bless them, because they didn't know how, weren't in a culture, we can end some of that. And it may be after our kids are raised, in my case, that we're learning things we wished we knew 20 years ago. But it all helps that next generation. It all helps the next person you connect with. And it's been a joy to connect with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dan.
All right. All right. Subscribe, like, and share if you appreciate Diacardia, the podcast to strengthen your partnership by speaking and listening through the heart. I'm Dan Mulhern, and I thank you for listening.